administration, he's now decided to come here to the briefing room in about 10 minutes and personally make a statement on this to the American people, something that he has done more than a dozen times now since he's been president. The last time we heard from him on this was after the Charleston church shooting back in June, and at that time he said this is something he's had to do too many times. Since then, in interviews and statements he's made, you said that this has no place, gun violence has no place in a civilized society, that this just doesn't happen in other advanced countries. In fact, the last tweet he put out on this was at the end of June. He said, here are the stats. Per population, we kill each other with guns at a rate 297 times more than Japan, 49 times more than France, 33 times more than Israel. We expect him to touch on that after he delivers condolences to all of the families that are involved and really still getting information on this. Truly a tragedy. But something else he might get at is what we heard from the press secretary today in the briefing when news of this was just breaking, talking about how making some common sense steps on gun control, as they put it, is still a top priority for the administration. We know that they've been working on potentially another executive action on gun control, possibly this time involving mental health or people who have been convicted of misdemeanors and domestic violence. That's really just been talked about behind the scenes, but so far they haven't taken that action. That's something that the administration has been asked about quite a bit. In fact, every time there's another high-profile shooting in this country. So we believe that's pending. Remember, that is something the administration did after the Sandy Hook shooting, coming out with dozens of moves in this executive action. Those entailed a lot of information sharing, some things to do with background checks, but some of those really haven't been very effective because of lack of funding and other
Very
issues.
fluid is my update. Right. And believe me, we've told them. Okay.
Hey, Rhonda, she clicked on it. Yeah.
I can't, thanks.
Okay, so we're clear until then.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think you're okay. Just like, say that twice.
And do we yet know what they're going to do after this?
Well, let's
Oh, you are? Good.
Can you see your stick mark?
Yeah, that sounds good. Great.
He's got it. Yeah, just stick like Sandra chair.
Sir? Okay.
Okay, but now he's.
Somebody was talking to me just going out to the roommate on here.
Yeah, I'll get, yeah, bring me up in here at PCR, I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Okay, he can come in. Thank you. Very good.
Hey, Mark, see you. Are you gonna be on the phone with anybody or not? No. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, testing. Testing. You guys good? ABC. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Good?
Hi, it's Kristen. Hey. Great, thank you. Really appreciate it. You're in close to on time.
I hear them.
Can they get my house here? Who's gonna bring it up?
You're in close to on time.
6. It's already 6:20, so we'll get a 2-minute break.
Right.
Bucks, they're late.
We've got 6:21 to be late.
Close to on time, you're saying.
Yeah, that's what you're telling me, right?
You should be getting ambient.
Be gentle than his first day.
He's nervous, he sees who his crew is today.
Yeah, exactly.
And guys, I don't know if you can hear Christian, but I can see from my laptop that they are close to on time. So if White House will hold that. There will be a 2-minute break. It'll be announced.
Sure. On shooting incidents. Yeah. Yes. That was the last one. Wasn't it?
Will do.
Yeah. Oh, no. Shooting. That's what I meant.
Hey.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the lectern's ready to go, so that's already been done, but, we haven't gotten a warning at all.
Yes, Ward, I hear you. Ward, I hear you. Go ahead. Ward, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mark, is this the 16th at 10:50?
The 2-minute warning for station
Ward,
by the
can you hear me?
president. 2-minute warning for station by the president.
2 minutes.
All right, 2-minute warning. I'm just trying to communicate. You just gave us the 2-minute warning, letting you know. 2-minute warning. Please acknowledge. Thank you.
time ago that he had to speak on this, and I'm reminded of what he had to say in
40 seconds
Charleston when he
to
gave the
statement,
eulogy for the Reverend Hinckley. He said it would be a betrayal
David, in
of
all too
everything that
familiar
Reverend
sights,
stood
the
for
president will
if
now be
relentless
speaking for the
past and
15th
silence. The
time
president has said
following a
many
mass
times
shooting.
before
He has
that
called
this
his
has no
inability to do
place in a
something to
civilized
stop
society,
gun
and he
violence
talks
in
about
this
the
country
unique
the
mayhem,
biggest frustration
that
of his
gun violence in
presidency.
this country has
Despite
caused as
repeated
opposed to
efforts,
many
he has been
other
unable to get
civilized
gun
countries
laws
around
in
the
this
world.
country
At
changed.
least
He
7
called the
times he
shooting
has struck
in
the site of
Newtown
mass
the
shootings,
worst
most
day of his
recently
presidency. I imagine
Charleston,
we'll hear
and
some
he
of
has
that
come up to this
frustration,
podium
even some of
before,
that
but
anger
he
as he
has had
talks
no success
here
in
tonight
getting
with
what he
his
calls
condolences
common sense
to the victims and their families.
There's been another mass shooting in America, this time in a community college in Oregon. That means there are more American families, moms, dads, children, whose lives have been changed forever. That means there's another community stunned with grief, and communities across the country forced to relieve their own anguish, and parents across the country who are scared because they know it might have been their families or their children. I've been to Roseburg, Oregon. There are really good people there. I want to thank all the first responders whose bravery likely saved some lives today. Federal law enforcement has been on the scene in a supporting role, and we've offered to stay and help as much as Roseburg needs for as long as they need. In the coming days, we'll learn about the victims, young men and women who were studying and learning and working hard, their eyes set on the future, their dreams on what they could make of their lives. And America will wrap everyone who's grieving with our prayers and our love. But as I said just a few months ago, and I said a few months before that, and I said each time we see one of these mass shootings, our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It's not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. Next week, or a couple of months from now. We don't yet know why this individual did what he did. And it's fair to say that anybody who does this has a sickness in their minds, regardless of what they think their motivations may be. But we are not the only country on earth that has people with mental illnesses or want to do harm to other people. We are the only advanced country on earth that sees these kinds of mass shootings every few months. Earlier this year, I answered a question in an interview by saying, the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. And later that day, there was a mass shooting at a movie theater in Lafayette, Louisiana. That day. Somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this. We've talked about this after Columbine and Blacksburg, after Tucson, after Newtown, after Aurora, after Charleston. It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun. And what's become routine, of course, is the response of those who oppose any kind of common sense gun legislation. Right now, I can imagine the press releases being cranked out. We need more guns, they'll argue. Fewer gun safety laws. Does anybody really believe that? There are scores of responsible gun owners in this country. They know that's not true. We know because of the polling that says the majority of Americans understand we should be changing these laws, including the majority of responsible, law-abiding gun owners. There is a gun for roughly every man, woman, and child in America. So how can you, with a straight face, make the argument that more guns will make us safer? We know that states with the most gun laws tend to have the fewest gun deaths. So the notion that gun laws don't work or just will make it harder for law-abiding citizens and criminals will still get their guns, it's not borne out by the evidence. We know that other countries, in response to one mass shooting, have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, countries like ours. So we know there are ways to prevent it. And of course, what's also routine is that somebody somewhere will comment and say, Obama politicized this issue. Well, this is something we should politicize. It is relevant to our common life together, to the body politic. I would ask news organizations, because I won't put these facts forward, have news organizations tally up the number of Americans who've been killed through terrorist attacks over the last decade and the number of Americans who've been killed by gun violence. And post those side by side on your news reports. This won't be information coming from me, it will be coming from you. We spend over $1 trillion and pass countless laws and devote entire agencies to preventing terrorist attacks on our soil, and rightfully so. And yet, we have a Congress that explicitly blocks us from even collecting data on how we could potentially reduce gun deaths. How can that be? This is a political choice that we make to allow this to happen every few months in America. We collectively are answerable to those families who lose their loved ones because of our inaction. When Americans are killed in mine disasters, we work to make mines safer. When Americans are killed in floods and hurricanes, we make communities safer. When roads are unsafe, we fix them to reduce auto fatalities. We have seatbelt laws because we know it saves lives. So the notion that gun violence is somehow different, that our freedom and our Constitution prohibits any modest regulation of how we use a deadly weapon, when there are law-abiding gun owners all across the country who could hunt and protect their families and do everything they do under such regulations. Doesn't make sense. So, tonight, as those of us who are lucky enough to hug our kids a little closer, are thinking about the families who aren't so fortunate, I'd ask the American people to think about how they can get our government to change these laws and to save lives and to let young people grow up. And that will require a change of politics on this issue. And it will require that the American people, individually, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, when you decide to vote for somebody, are making a determination as to whether this cause of continuing death for innocent people should be a relevant factor in your decision. If you think this is a problem, then you should expect your elected officials to reflect your views. And I would particularly ask America's gun owners who are using those guns properly, safely, to hunt, for sport, for protecting their families, to think about whether your views are properly being represented by the organization that suggests it's speaking for you. And each time this happens, I'm going to bring this up. Each time this happens, I am going to say that we can actually do something about it, but we're going to have to change our laws. And this is not something I can do by myself. I've got to have a Congress, and I've got to have state legislatures and governors who are willing to work with me on this. I hope and pray that I don't have to come out again during my tenure as president to offer my condolences to families in these circumstances. But based on my experience as president, I can't guarantee that. And that's terrible to say. And it can change. May God bless the memories of those who were killed today. May He bring comfort to their families and courage to the injured as they fight their way back. And may He give us the strength to come together and find the courage to change. Thank you.
Because now he's sort of going to the voter individually, feeling like Congress is an impossibility.
Hi guys, it's Donnelly with Jansen. Are we swaying her to MS or should she need to be on the network?
Hey. Yep.
Great, thank you.
I've watched the president evolve in dealing with these shooting aftermaths. At first, he described his sadness and tried to act as sort of a counselor and a grief counselor for the country in the aftermath of the shootings. He has gotten progressively more angry about what he considers to be calcified politics about gun control that simply cannot move.
Yes.
And what he said tonight, I think, is very important in that broad coverage is numb to this. The politics, the conversation. We are treating this as if it's become routine in America for mass shootings to occur once every 2 or 3 months. And he said he's essentially, didn't use his exact words, but he's sick of it. You could see it in his face. You could see it in his overall emotional reaction. And what the president said is, I can't do this alone. Congress has to change. American voters have to change. Signals to Congress have to change. And until that happens, he feels himself somewhat powerless to deal with the gun control issue. The White House talks a relatively good game about how important this is to the president. The fact is, they do not lobby Congress hard on this issue. They don't constantly ask allies in the House or Senate to bring things up on the floor of the Senate or the House in terms of an amendment or something else. The president has made this a priority in a rhetorical sense, but he doesn't fight for it in the trenches legislatively because he doesn't think he's going to win. Well, perhaps that will change here at the White House. Certainly the president tonight is asking the country first think and then act differently on this issue.
He especially got emotional when he talked about, those.
Well, so the White House has asked Congress to do a couple of things. One, have universal background checks for all gun control sales. So there would be a mechanism by which if there's a gun purchased, there could be an instantaneous or relatively instantaneous check on the criminal or mental background of any purchaser. Then there are elements of the gun control package the White House has presented to Congress that would deal with how many bullets you could have in a magazine for any sort of automatic weapon. These are the two principal aspects. It came before the Senate after the Sandy Hook shooting. It did not proceed. It never even got a vote in the House. So those are the two biggest elements of the gun control package the president has put together and presented to Congress, saying these are modest. They wouldn't stop every shooting. It's not even clear it would have been relevant in this case. We don't know yet. There's much we don't know about this Oregon case. But the president says that is less important than the fact that this nation ought to be able to do something and at least concentrate its mind around